Welcome back to KC Talks EV, and yes, the search is finally over. I've now bought the replacement for my Mark 1 ZS EV that I purchased in December 2019. Just to keep in mind that my ZS EV is still staying in the family. It's just more of a case of I've completely forgot about the 70,000 mile update video, which will be released in due course. But in this video, at least, we're going to talk about my reasonings for purchasing this, which is a Hyundai Ioniq electric 38 kilowatt hour, as well as whether or not purchasing a used electric vehicle is a good decision. So without further ado, let's get started. In terms of specification, this vehicle has a 40.4 total capacity and a 38.3 kilowatt hour usable capacity pack. Now, this is actually the post facelift model. There is a pre-facelift with a 28 kilowatt hour usable capacity pack. And the one big disadvantage of this vehicle is the slower rapid charging. So this vehicle kind of tops out around 45-50 kilowatts versus the pre-facelift that can easily go up to about 70 kilowatt. And bear in mind, because of the smaller battery, it will charge in less time as well. But obviously the major advantage is that you do get slightly additional range with the facelift model. And in my opinion, the additional range more than outweighed the slower rapid charging speeds. I think if, for example, you didn't have home charging, that would be a different story. But at least in my case, I have destination charging and home charging was less of an issue. WLTP is 193 miles. That is exactly 30-mile increase over my Mark 1 ZS EV. But in my honest opinion, I think the range loss in winter is actually a lot less in comparison. So what that means is I get a bit more consistency in terms of the range. This vehicle is the premium SE trim. So this vehicle, in addition, compared to the premium spec, has the upgraded Infinity sound system. So it's an 8-speaker one, which I'll talk about in a moment. It's got heated, ventilated, and leather upholstered seats, which again, really going to be useful in the summer. It's also got front parking sensors, blind spot monitoring. Blind spot monitoring I am a little bit confused about because obviously I would have thought that's more of a safety feature. I haven't looked at the Euro NCAP requirements more recently. And then finally, it's got rear privacy glass. Now that does cause a little bit of problems with visibility in the back. I would argue that having rear privacy glass has meant that it's quite dark, but actually they have fitted a rear interior light, so that kind of balances out. You could have got this vehicle with the optional panoramic roof or sunroof. Unfortunately, very little vehicles actually have that option. I think it was just because during COVID, the lead times for the ones with the sunroof were significantly longer. Now, I purchased this vehicle for £11,000 roughly, and this actually means that it was cheaper than the equivalent hybrid or plug-in hybrid vehicles, which I think is really kind of amazing when you think about it. Yes, you could have got a much higher mileage hybrid or plug-in hybrid for that sort of money, but again, you could have also got a much cheaper electric model with higher mileage for even less than that. So essentially, there is no payback period. It could be exactly the same in running costs compared to the hybrid or plug-in hybrid, and I would have still saved money on the purchase price anyway. But obviously, I am saving a considerable amount of money, even though the hybrid is probably one of the most efficient vehicles that you can buy in terms of petrol running vehicles on the market. In terms of the positives compared to my Mark 1 ZS EV, by far the efficiency is definitely one of them. I have not got less than 3.6 to 3.7 miles per kilowatt hour on my regular work commute in this car. Now that is in comparison to my Mark 1 ZS EV, where if I was driving it in the same conditions and the same type of driving, I probably would be getting less than 3 miles per kilowatt hour. And bear in mind, again, if I actually eco-drive it a little bit more, I can get closer to 4, or even, I think the best I've got is around 4.8 miles per kilowatt hour. So again, this vehicle is most certainly one of the most efficient vehicles that you can buy currently available on the used market. Possibly on the new market, there might be the Tesla Model 3. I think rear-wheel drive long range might be able to do better, or the standard range might be able to do better. There are things like the Mitsubishi i-MiEV, but you are sacrificing quite a significant range on that one as well. The other thing I really like about this vehicle is that it has regen paddles. The regen paddles mean that you get what's called a 0 or level 0 regen mode. That effectively is like a coast mode, but I would like to point out that it is doing a tiny bit of regen if you actually have a look at it on the screen. And there is also a level 3 maximum regen, and if you actually hold the pedal, it will come to a complete stop as well. That is really, really nice. It's not one pedal driving, but absolutely allows you to control the regen, which in town situations is definitely more efficient, and a level 0 regen is much better for things like motorway or dual carriageway driving. The final thing I want to talk about is actually the stereo. As I mentioned, this vehicle has a 300 watt 8-speaker Infinity sound system. Now it's got 2 tweeters, 2 woofers at the front with a center speaker, and 2 woofers and a subwoofer in the boot. And I would argue this is probably one of the better sound systems. It's nowhere near as good as, for example, Mark Levinson that I've had in a lot of the Lexus electric vehicles that I've tested, but by far it is still pretty good compared to my Mark 1 ZS EV. That had a 6-speaker sound system, no subwoofer, and if I'm honest, it wasn't very good, especially when I've now got into this vehicle. So the question is, after just under 2 months and 2,500 miles travelled in this vehicle, what do I think of it and have I made the right decision? And I think the simple answer is a absolute resounding yes, I have. I spoke to Martin Miller at EV Experts at the British Motor Show, and we discussed the absolute bargains that you can have on the electric vehicle market, especially on the used market at the moment. And things like the Corsa E, for example, the Ioniq in this case, absolutely, you can actually get the electric vehicle for less money than their equivalent petrol, diesel, plug-in hybrid or hybrid equivalents, which essentially means if you've got, for example, the ability to charge at home, if you've got workplace charging, if you go to a place on the regular every week that has charging, essentially is a bit of a no-brainer, really. I would argue that if you don't have a driveway and you don't have any form of charging around you or in places that you go already, it would be a bit more of a struggle. But if you have those options to you, and that is starting to get a lot more in terms of infrastructure, I think at this point, especially when they are less than the equivalent petrol or diesel, it's worth it. Now, I would like to point out that actually I was looking at some other alternatives. So the biggest alternatives were the e-Niro, as I mentioned, the 64 kilowatt hour model, and the Kona 64 kilowatt hour model. The major reasons why I didn't go for those, even though they did have significantly more range, was I didn't quite like the SUV body style. Currently, I have the options, and there's plenty of options on the market for those standard hatchback vehicles, and I just wanted one of those, really. By the way, you can get a 39 kilowatt hour Kona and e-Niro, but obviously that would have significantly less range compared to this one, again, for the reasons that I just mentioned. The other thing as well was pricing. They were definitely more expensive for the equivalent mileage. And in fact, actually with the e-Niro, I couldn't find one for less than around £16,000. So that is quite a bit of a premium compared to this vehicle. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that the Kona 64 kilowatt hour actually feels quite cramped in the back compared to this Ioniq, and that is a very odd thing given the fact that that vehicle should be slightly larger, but unfortunately it isn't. So that is something to keep in mind. So I think that is pretty much it. So if you liked the video or you found it informative, please give it a like, dislike it if you didn't. Leave a comment below to let me know your thoughts on the Hyundai Ioniq Electric, and I think that is pretty much it. So thank you for watching and talk to you later.